We'll be starting the Desert Ranch Experimental Station incident of Magic Eyes Only, Earth's Encounters with Extraterrestrial Technology by Ryan S. Wood. The Desert Range Experiment Station, DRES, is an 87 square mile research facility located about 15 miles east of the Nevada-Utah border in Millard County, Utah. Established in 1933 to study the effects of grazing in the fragile desert environment of the Great Basin, the DRES is managed by the U.S. Forest Service, an arm of the Department of Agriculture. In 1976, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, designated a portion of the DRES a biosphere reserve. In the summer of 2005, award-winning investigative journalist and author Linda Moulton Howe joined California investigator Steve Jones to research an alleged UFO crash said to have occurred in the vicinity of the DRES in 1953. Howe explains, in 1953, Bart Wright was 10 years old, living with his large family of a dozen siblings on the outskirts of Baker, Nevada. Baker was and is a small community about 45 minutes by car from the Desert Range Experimental Station, DRES, in neighboring Millard County, Utah. In 2001, Rex Leonard, manager of the Outlaw Bar in Baker, hired Bart Wright to be a bartender. Bart told Rex about a haunting memory he had from about 10 years old in 1953. I could not find Bart Wright, but I talked by phone with Rex Leonard about the 2001 conversation he remembered in the Outlaw Bar. Our discussion went as follows. Bart said he was about 9 or 10 years old after it was dark and this thing came flying across the valley and landed on the other side of the mountain, which would put it down near the DRES site. How? Did he describe anything about the color? Leonard. I think he said it had a kind of pervasive blue color, like an electric light, you know. I do remember him talking about it as a little kid. He saw this thing, and the time and date around 1953, I think it would coincide with the object Steve Jones is convinced landed, fell, hit, or crashed out there in that dry lake on the other side of the mountain from where Bart was living then when he was growing up. He saw it in the eyes of a 10-year-old. It was just a bright light, and when it hit the ground, rumbled, as you say, he probably did run to his mother. It seems like he said there were people from the government came around to talk to people all over the valley after that. The DRES site is a fascinating place. How that whole thing is just carved out there and is now dedicated to the United Nations. There is a plaque there. It says that. It's astonishing. Looking at the map, I counted 82 sections for it. That's 82 square miles dedicated to, owned, operated, controlled, and funded by the United Nations. Oh my God. I don't know what the hell that means, and I've approached it from all directions in four-wheel drive, coming in from the north, the west, coming on the dim roads over the mountains. There is nothing there but these buildings just a quarter-mile off the highway. How? It's like hiding in plain sight. Leonard, exactly, yes. Geologist Lamont Sorensen of Salt Lake City, Utah, was hired in 1999 by Steve Jones and Company of Elverta, California, to conduct magnetometer and seismic tests of a section in the Large Triangle to search for metal or other underground anomalies. We encountered no evidence or subsurface anomalies by either the magnetic or seismic methods used at this site. Mr. Sorensen wrote in his report titled Results of Geophysical Investigations, Vicinity of Desert Range Experimental Station, Millard County, Utah. However, Mr. Sorensen told Steve Jones that he did not think the large triangle that looked gouged into the land in June 11, 1953, and later aerial photos is made by nature. The implication is that an artificial digging process might have taken, perhaps, to bury a large object that could not be transported. One of the four-generation settlers in the town of Garrison nearest to DRES is 90-year-old Lad Davies. According to Rex Leonard, Lad told him that once long ago, while he was riding a sunup, he saw a UFO not more than 100 yards away. It was making absolutely no sound, and when it went by, the color was black, as if light was being sucked into it, like you could look into infinity looking inside of it. Leonard added, I don't know exactly what that meant, but it was very vividly etched in his mind. And here's a picture of this triangle, June 11, 1953 aerial photo of unusual large triangle land feature near DRES. Next incident at Fort Polk, Louisiana, USA, summer 1953. Sergeant H.J. saw duty in Korea with the Army 24th Infantry and claims direct and personal knowledge of a crashed UFO event in Louisiana in the summer of 1953. According to H.J., he was stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana. At the time was on maneuvers in the area on a particular day when at around dusk, an egg-shaped object crash-landed close to them in soft sandy soil. According to H.J., the object was ovoid, large, and was surrounded by a fin-like protrusion at its equator. Top brass and medics quickly arrived on the scene, recalled the witness, and a small body was removed along with three living creatures, each approximately 4 foot tall in height and displaying large heads. After having been placed in isolation, all reportedly died soon afterwards. Next incident in New Mexico, USA, 1954. From the research team of Fred Schaefer, Gerald Miskar, and Linda Robinson comes the account of K.A., who joined the Air Force in early 1954 after having completed his basic training at Sampson Air Force Base, Geneva, New York. K.A. was transferred to Walker Air Force Base, New Mexico, where he began special training in the Sikorsky H-9 helicopter in relation to desert search and rescue operations. According to K.A., on the night of 12 April 1954, he and his crew were scrambled to take part in a rescue mission following a crash in the desert. K.A. informed Schaefer, Miskar, and Robinson that after having been flown for approximately 25 miles from Walker into the heart of the desert, his team came upon a saucer-like object that had crashed edgewise into the sand and that was approximately 40 to 50 feet in diameter. Scattered outside the craft were 4 small bodies that were abnormally proportioned and approximately 4 to 4.5 feet in height that K.A. was ordered to photograph. Scuttlebutt suggests the craft and bodies were taken to Walker, asserted K.A. Shortly after, under the false accusation that he had subsequently gone AWOL and discussed classified data pertaining to the crash without official authority to do so, K.A. was dismissed from the Air Force. Next incident, the Lagerfeld, this is a German word, or Icelandic word, the Lagerfeld and Jökulla Rivers, Iceland, August 1954. A 2-page document prepared by the 468th Counterintelligence Corps, CIC, Detachment for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, Washington, D.C., described an intriguing event that occurred in northeastern Iceland in 1954. According to the document titled Unidentified Flying Object, 1. On September 1st, 1954, information was received by this command to the effect that an unidentified flying object had been sighted at approximately 2050 hours 24 August 1954, the vicinity of Elgistadir by an individual at Hijardabol, a farm located near the junction of the Lagafarjot and Jacula rivers in northeastern Ireland. 2. The eyewitness, who was located approximately 3,000 feet from the line of flight of the object, described it as being approximately the length of a man's arm, 2 to 2.5 feet long, approximately 4 to 5 inches in diameter, cylindrical in shape, and dark gray in color. The object, emitting a loud whizzing sound, reportedly crossed the sky from the northwest and traveled a level course to the southeast at a rapid rate of speed. The object continued its level flight for some time and then lost speed and fell into a sandbar at Lagarfajot River. 3. The farmer who had witnessed the unidentified object did not mark the impact area until 30 August. Between the time of the sighting and the marking, the Lagarfajot River had risen twice and washed over the sandbar where the object reportedly landed, altering the size and shape of the sandbar. After several unsuccessful attempts to reach the location of the sighting, a Defense Force investigative team arrived at the referenced area on 11 September 1954. The reported area of impact, approximately 250 feet by 250 feet, was researched with mine detectors set SCR 625, but with negative results. The detector set is so constructed as to be effective for only a depth from 18 to 22 inches. Much of the area was underwater at the time of the search, and the soil, lava sand, is of such consistency as to render any results obtained with the detector set erratic at best. 5. Investigation of the reputation of the eyewitness and those individuals reported as having heard the sound disclosed that these persons are considered to be reliable and are of good reputation in the community. Among the possible identities of the reported object are a bird such as the loon, whose flight pattern resembles that described by the eyewitness, a meteor, or a tip tank of an aircraft. There were no Defense Force aircraft in the vicinity of the referenced area during the reported time of the sighting. 7. Conclusion. It is the opinion of this command that some object, nature unknown, did land in the vicinity of the referenced area. Because of the constant motion of the river bottom and the condition of the impact area, shifting lava, sand, and water, two possibilities present themselves. The entire area could be dug up in an effort to locate the object, but this method, after consideration, was disregarded because of the great expanse involved. On the other hand, it is believed that the most practical method of determining the nature of the unidentified object is a device which can detect the presence of foreign substances 5 to 6 feet below the surface. Such a device is not available in this command, nor is there one on requisition. Due to the aforementioned condition of the impact area at the river bottom, it is recommended that such a device be furnished this command as soon as possible, if it is felt necessary to locate and identify the object. Available Air Force files do not reflect that any subsequent search for the mysterious object met with any degree of success. We are therefore left with a puzzling case and a still unidentified aerial object that might conceivably remain buried deep below Iceland's Lagarfajot River. Okay, next incident. Abatuba, Brazil, September 1957. Ibrahim Sued, a journalist with Brazil's O Globo newspaper, reported on 14 September 1957 that he had received an anonymous letter from a correspondent who asserted that he and a group of friends had a few days ago witnessed the mid-air explosion of a UFO at a beach near Abatuba, Sao Paulo, Brazil. According to the letter writer, the disc-shaped object disintegrated into thousands of fiery fragments which fell sparkling with magnificent brightness. Most of these fragments, almost all, fell into the sea, but a number of small pieces fell close to the beach, and we picked up a large amount of this material, which was as light as paper. I am enclosing a sample of it. Galvanized into action by this report, Olavo Fontes, a Brazilian doctor and a member of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, ARPO, met with the distinctly skeptical Sued, who was more than willing to provide the doctor with the fragments for potential analysis. According to researcher John Harney, the material was given a spectrographic analysis, and the report merely indicated that this showed the presence of magnesium of a high degree of purity and absence of any other metallic element. Dr. Fontes was not satisfied with this report and attempted to obtain a more detailed analysis. A second spectrographic test confirmed the first result. Other samples were later analyzed using more refined techniques. Eventually, after studying the reports of the analysis and relevant technical data on the industrial methods used in refining magnesium, Fontes came to the conclusion that the magnesium was of a higher degree of purity than could be obtained by any refining process known at the time. In January 1969, the Condon Committee, which was investigating UFOs at the behest of the United States Air Force, that had also been giving access to samples, declared although the Brazilian fragment proved not to be pure as claimed, the possibility remained that the material was unique. Indeed, the high content of strontium present in the samples, noted the committee, was deemed interesting. However, in fact, that similar concentrations of strontium were also found in magnesium manufactured by Dow Chemical as far back as 1940, led the committee to attribute a down-to-earth explanation of the Abatuba debris. Countless theories have been advanced as to the nature of the material retrieved at Abatuba, including the possibility of a meteorite strike, an outright hoax, the crash of an aircraft, a missile explosion, and of course a genuine UFO. As the late Jim and Coral Lorenz of ARPO wrote, that the material is not 100% pure magnesium does not lessen the impact of the case, for we still have to explain how the magnesium got to a remote beach area at that time. What manner of machine was the shiny disc-shaped object that exploded? Next incident, Clovis, New Mexico, USA, July or August 1957 or 1958. Jake served in the U.S. military from 1951 to 1960, and while traveling through New Mexico in the summer of either 1957 or 1958, heard rumors of pertaining to a crash of some kind that involved an aircraft of unusual design. Usual in the sense that, according to fellow military personnel that had flown over the site, it displayed no tail section. Along with two Air Force buddies, Jake set off for the location, which, to the best of his recollection, was on ranch land 30 to 35 miles away of Clovis, New Mexico. On arrival, they saw a number of military vehicles and personnel in attendance at a site that was scattered with small pieces of unusual lightweight wreckage. There were indications that something large had hit the ground. After having been questioned as to who they were and why they were there, Jake and his friends were ordered to leave the area and remain silent with regard to the incident. Researcher Debbie Valero, who undertook a detailed study of the case, says the event cannot be identified as a crashed UFO, but it is clear from what Jake and his friends had observed and heard that a crash of some type of aircraft had occurred, and it was apparently being treated somewhat differently from a regular plane crash. Next incident in Salisbury, Australia, 1958-1959. British researcher and author Timothy Good has uncovered details of a noteworthy event that occurred in the late 1950s in South Australia. Good's source was employed from 1956 to 1960 as a radio technician at the Weapons Research Establishment, Salisbury, South Australia. The man recalled in either 1958 or 1959 a strange spherical object that was recovered at Wooma Testing Range. It was a sphere about 2 to 9 inches in diameter. Its color was a mid-gray metallic, somewhat darkened by extreme heat. We tried to cut it and could not even mark it with hand tools, saws, drills, hammers, chisels, nothing. Shortly afterward, Good was informed U.S. authorities claimed the material was American space debris, whereupon it was transferred to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Perhaps this is foolish, Good's source advised him, but for many years now I have believed that we held in those several days was not merely space debris, perhaps not even some material left by a UFO, but that it was perhaps some form of UFO itself. Furthermore, from the Joint Intelligence Bureau, JIB, of New Zealand's Ministry of Defense, files have surfaced demonstrating that numerous such spheres had been recovered throughout Australia in the period 1963 to 1972, and curiously enough, all of the spheres were claimed by U.S. authorities, who maintained that they originated with the American space program. All of the spheres were approximately 2 feet in diameter and were recovered in areas including New South Wales, Western Australia, and Queensland. Whether the Australian authorities were satisfied with the explanations put forth by the Americans as they sought to justify the discovery of the spheres was not made clear from a reading of the files. However, it is evident that the governments of New Zealand and Australia were involved in the retrievals of at least 12 such spheres in less than a decade. By far, the most interesting piece of data related to this affair can be found in a solitary newspaper clipping contained within the archives of New Zealand's JIB. Dating from 1972, it refers to a sphere crash on Australian territory in 1963. According to the report, 2 spheres had been recovered approximately 150 miles north of Broken Hill, and Broken Hill police had arranged for the objects to be flown to the National Weapons Research Establishment, NWRE, in Adelaide for examination. Unfortunately for the police, the pilot of the aircraft refused to allow the mysterious spheres on board his aircraft lest they explode. Ultimately, the police were forced to transfer the spheres by road. However, after examination by specialist staff at the NWRE, it was determined that the spheres were neither Soviet nor American in origin. From where did they originate? The newspaper did not know, and the authorities were not and are still not to this day saying anything. Next incident in Wichita Falls, Texas, September 1960. Found within a batch of documents concerning Project Moondust, ostensibly an Air Force operation designed to recover crashed Soviet space debris, but rumored to have played an integral role in UFO crash retrieval incidents, and declassified by the Department of State in 1994, comes the following report of 11 October 1960. Subject: Moon Dust Report, Wichita Falls, Texas, 28 September 1960. 2. Director, Special Investigations, Headquarters, USAF, Washington, 25 D.C. References made to telephonic spot report from this district office of 28 September 1960 referred to AFC SI 6D. Hey.